Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Roberts, a friendly neighbor from St. Louis, here to allow a little time to talk about a little bit of my history. Some of you know my family and some of the things my brother Steve and I have done in St. Louis over the years, which includes taking the old Sears building and turning it into the Victor Roberts building. We named it after my dad, who was there to assist us for over 30 years. We held on to that building and worked that building, such as it may be, to prevent it from becoming a 200,000 square foot monolith to crime and pestilence. It was a struggle, but we were just born 2 blocks from there on Vernon, and absolutely didn't want our neighborhood to face a huge boarded up, ugly building. So we fought through it. And most recently, we sold it to the Urban League, who's done a magnificent job of creating a huge anchor where it needs to be, right on the corner of Martin Luther King and Kings Highway and Page. Too many cities that we go to, if you hear that a building is on Dr. Martin Luther King, the man that we're honoring today, right away you think that the street is just not very attractive or is full of crime. And I think it's up to us to change the Martin Luther King streets to become a proud symbol for our community. It's just, and literally any city you go to, that's the case. But not in St. Louis. We're going to start to make changes there. Up and down Martin Luther King, which used to be Easton. Over the days in the past, that used to be our Black Wall Street. We had insurance companies and we had CPAs and lawyers and all types of businesses up and down. Now it looks a little bit like a ghost town. But by us anchoring Kings Highway and Martin Luther King, I think we're going to see much more progress. We're seeing some around Grand and Martin Luther King area. And now if we can just connect those two, similar to what we did when we bought the corners at Delmar and Kings Highway, the concept being that if we could create like a dumbbell approach where there's a heavyweight at Delmar Kings Highway, and you all know we own the strip over there. We built the Aldis, we built the White Castle, and the family down across the street. And in the middle, we were the developers for the O'Reilly's auto parts store. And then, of course, if you go to the other side of Kings Highway, we all know about the Victor Roberts building, the Roberts Village behind it. So now we have those 2 anchors, and in the middle, we have great housing, such as on Lewis Place and Fountain Place, and all through there. The housing, the brick and mortar components of those neighborhoods are great and just perfect for renovations. So we in St. Louis really can do a lot more. We're beginning to see that taking place. We're going to see a great bit of development between Taylor and Kings Highway on Delmar. That will start to take place probably this year. So, just continue to look and see how we're doing, and in collaboration with other developers over there. I started by having a little dashiki business in college, where I would sell them at the bookstores. People ask, well, how did you get caught into the business? Well, it wasn't my parents exactly, because Dad worked at the post office for 39 years. We just lost him a year ago at the age of 99 and a half. My mom, we lost just a few years before that, and at 93, both of whom just were really great parents and gave us stability. So it made it easy for us to have the confidence to proceed and do things like run for alderman after finishing law school. In fact, I'll tell you a cute story. The week that I graduated from law school, my brother entered law school that week, which means he was graduating from college. And my mom was graduated from college at the same time. So, she was one of those persistent people and would not let her children outdo her academically, of course. Very resourceful lady. She did not buy anything retail. Everything was a negotiation in the stores. And I think that that's where I learned my basics to realize that, you can negotiate just about anything in the world, in business. So we jumped into business. As you know, Steve and I were both aldermen for a number of years. There in our 20s and 30s, we were the youngest. And what did it do? It provided us with some opportunities to build some credibility, to get some understanding of our community. I moved 2 blocks from the projects. I lived on Cook Avenue, right near the Blue Mar projects. And to get elected, I had to spend a considerable amount of time, of course, campaigning in the projects, where you learn more about the heartbreak and the needs of our people, and yet the ambition of our youth to still achieve and grow. And I've always felt, if nothing else, and I succeeded, I would always be able to give back and set examples. And I'm hoping this audience today will receive some of the things I'm going to talk about, because I'm going to be very disruptive in your minds. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about today might concern you and scare you. But in my opinion, to be successful in business and to be an entrepreneur, you have to be both a futurist, but also an optimist. And what do I mean by that? Well, who would have thought that, a kid who grew up in North St. Louis would have owned 13 hotels, which is what we did, 12 full-power television stations, took 3 companies public, including our own wireless phone company, which we ultimately sold to Sprint. If you read the newspapers or listen to CNN, they threw numbers like us having assets close to $1 billion from zero. Well, that was fine until 2008, when the recession hit and the banks started to close in on us, as they did with everybody. And then often you have to sell your properties at a deep discount. I say that because people talk about some of the bright side of life, but there's some other sides too that's a little darker, and you've got to be able to persevere through the good and the challenge. So, I will say to you that it's an interesting challenge to watch, owning stock in a company and watching yourself lose $50 to $100 million and not be able to do anything about it. Why is it that you can't do anything about it? Because if you're a publicly held company and you're an insider, you cannot sell or buy shares of those stocks for a 6-month interval. For those who need to know more about that, you should talk to your lawyers if you're going to go public, so you understand, just how that works. I'm going to probably spend a little more time in the future being a coach and a mentor, and do that as a kind of a side business, because I've learned so much. And the reason I've learned much is because I did it myself. I didn't have those mentors. I learned the hard way, the old-fashioned way. And I'm from Missouri, so anything you see and you hear about me, I can back it up. And much like Muhammad Ali said when I had his 50th birthday party here at my house in St. Louis, he said, "It ain't bragging if you can back it up." So I say to you, everyone, sometimes you need to step out on faith and trust in your own abilities and be able to achieve. So out of the nearly 100 businesses, over 11,000 employees that I've been able to touch on, I think that as we look into the future, we better prepare ourselves for a whole nother type of lifestyle. Where will people be spending money 20 years from now? How will they be spending that money? What are they going to be buying? And what currency will they be using? This is a futuristic question. and one that we should prepare ourselves for and try to embrace. For example, in the future, we will find that there will be autonomous vehicles, that's driverless vehicles. And one day you'll take your child out to send them to school in an autonomous vehicle. They'll go to the school and only the teacher will have the code to actually take that child out of the vehicle and put them in school. Autonomous vehicles will make a difference, and there will probably be Ubers you will not see Ubers as you've seen them in the past with drivers. They'll come to you and it'll be very robotic in nature. So what about robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning? What does all that mean, and how do we apply ourselves to it? And are we educating our children? So one of the efforts that I'm involved with now is something called the Roberts Innovation Group. And I've assembled a number of high-level professionals in areas of drone technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence, the metaverse, esports. There's so many of these new terms that are coming along that you need to know about. For example, drones. You've heard probably about drones. Well, drones are used in the military to avoid people from being shot down. And just a drone could go in and could release its ordnance, blow up whatever it's trying to blow up, and return or not return, but it limits human risk. But what else about drones? In the future, every police department, every fire department, most farmers, real estate developers, real estate owners will all need to understand drones and drone technology. Let me set the example more clear. Let's assume I'm a policeman and I need to know where the shooter is. What if I could just fly a drone in and identify the location of the shooter? What if I'm a fireman and I need to know the hot spots in a building and I don't need a human to climb up a ladder to help me find it? I can send a drone in to do it. Or what if I'm a farmer and I have a huge amount of acreage and I need to determine, where is the need for water, what plants are not necessarily growing as they should at any given point in time. What if I'm a real estate guy and I own a shopping center and I need to get up on the roof to see what's the condition of my property? Do I send a human to walk it, or can I just send a drone? So my point is, this concept of drone technology, and think of it this way: every police station in the world, every fire department facility in the world will need one, will need a technician. So one of the things that the Roberts Innovation Group is doing is we're going after HBCUs, talking to the presidents of our colleges, posing the very question that I just posed to you: where will people be spending money 20 years from now? And are you preparing your students to either enter the workforce or become entrepreneurs? Are you teaching them esports? Are you teaching them a little bit about robotics and artificial intelligence? Are you giving them a chance to become cybersecurity experts? Are you teaching these courses to our youth now? And even K through 12 we're working with, just to get our youth stimulated and thinking in the direction of science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM, you've heard that term before. And if we're not doing that, and other schools are, especially a lot of the white schools, then are we not putting ourselves in a position where yet we'll have another depressed community for failure to identify this technology revolution that's taking place? There's an old story about Rip Van Winkle. You might have heard that as a child. And Rip Van Winkle drank some ale and went up into the mountain, into the hills, fell asleep for 20 years. And then he came back down into the village in New England, and there was a restaurant, a bar, tavern actually, and the name of it was George's Tavern. And he went in and he took a glass of drink of ale, and he toasted. He said, "Long live King George." Well, he was immediately arrested for treason because the George that they were referring to was George Washington. Now, mind you, what had happened was he slept through a revolution. Rip Van Winkle slept through a revolution. My question to you are, to what extent are we in the Black community sleeping through a technology revolution? A technology experience in business that for the first time in history allows Black folks to have a level playing field for us to learn as much and be as inventive as possible. And there's no restrictions on being creative. So we have to do the best we can to get our youth prepared for it. And we have to look into the future. You know, in the future, we're going to have these nanochips, for example, that'll be inside of our bodies, that'll be able to tell our health condition. You know, if you look at it from this perspective, most humans die of some type of one of their organs go bad. Well, in today's world, we could take your DNA and put it into a 3D printer and actually reproduce a liver or any other organ that may be having trouble and implant it. Well, what does that mean? That also means that lifespans are going to go longer. And if lifespans go longer, then what are the needs of people who are getting older and staying older? Well, they'll always need food. They'll want to have entertainment. They'll need housing. We have to prepare ourselves for that type of business opportunity to fill those types of needs. One day in the future, you'll be able to look in the mirror, which will have these scientific nanochips on the mirror that will talk to the nanochip that's in your body. And you'll say to you'll look at the mirror and you'll say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, what's wrong with me?" And the mirror will do an analysis. The mirror will then send its analysis to RoboDoc. RoboDoc will then evaluate the data and then send information for the prescription to the robopharmacist. The robopharmacist, in turn, will pull the prescription that's needed, call the local drone company, have that drone company pick it up, deliver it to your house. And probably by that time, you'll have your personal robot that will receive it and bring it to you. And then you'll take your necessary medicine. Is that far-reaching? Not really. Is it possible? Probably even now. You know, if you take, for example, your phone, the phone that we all have, and we realize that it has the virtually infinite knowledge, that it has the ability to, you have the ability to ask it almost anything, and it will give you an answer, whether it's a quote from the Bible, or a math problem, or an address. It has all that data. Now imagine in the future that data is going to be in a chip that can be inserted into your brain and leaving your front lobe available, which is the creative side, and in the back area where you think. And now you could close your eyes, and as a result of a lens over your eye, you could close your eye and see yourself skiing, scuba diving. Now I'm trying to disrupt you here on purpose, because it's not that far away. There was a scenario where they had a rat. They put a memory chip in the brain of this rat. They placed the rat in front of a maze. The rat ran through the maze, had trouble, but eventually found its way to the reward. After that, it followed that same pattern. They took that chip and flew it across the country and placed it in another rat, this memory chip, placed a maze the same configuration as the one on the East Coast. And this one on the West Coast was able to literally walk through the maze to its reward without question. So memory chips that are going to take place in the human brain in the future will be such that you may be able to leave all type of data that you're learning about. And I've written books. I've written 3 books. Action Has No Season. Action Has No Season 2.0, because I wanted to deliver my experiences, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and share those so that those of us in the community could potentially gain from it and not repeat some of the challenges, but more importantly, be inspired to do more and realize you can do multiple businesses like I did with my brother Steve. I mean, we probably had 100 companies over the years. So let's go back for a moment. Now, imagine this memory chip going into your brain and being able to capture data. And in the future, 50, 100 years from now, when your great-great-grandchild wanted to learn more about you, a hologram could pop up that is your image, and it could literally have a conversation with you. Now, that's actually taking place in the Holocaust Museum, something very similar. It's still a little early, but it's where they have had a lot of conversations with Holocaust survivors who are now deceased, but they videotaped them, and they were able to, you're able to actually ask the question. So through artificial intelligence, it can interpret the question you're asking and then interpret how that person would respond back to you. Now, here's the scary part. Now you have potentially this chip in your brain, and the question is, to what extent are you becoming what I'm defining now as a Homo sapien robot, or Robo sapien, if you will. The movies, they call them cyborgs. But I'm wondering, are we creating another species of human that will ultimately be the dominant species in the world? And what are we going to do when a brain hacker comes along and hacks that chip in your brain, and suddenly you're doing crazy things that you would normally, of course, never do? How do you protect against that? I'm trying to disrupt your thinking. I'm probably going to make a few people nervous by saying these things, but I think we have to face the reality. This is the direction in which our society is going. It's the direction in which our businesses are going. Because now that I've said all that, the question becomes, where do you fit in? How do you begin to get your youth ready to experience education that's going to take them in the direction of these futuristic ideas in a practical way? Esports, for example, is something that's so popular now that people are creating esport teams. A 14-year-old the other day made $100,000 by winning an esports contest. A lot of times we see our little Black kids doing creative things and playing with their computers, and we pull them off. But the reality is we need to let them explore all of the expanding mind opportunities of youth so that they are prepared. Esports in the future, as I see it, as I predict, will become more of a gamification type business. What do I mean by that? You may see it in casinos where teams are competing against each other and people are betting on those teams. Esports may even find its way into the Olympics. So are we preparing our youth to explore and be comfortable and being good at esports, just like we're good in other sports? The metaverse, for example, is something that I want you all to learn about, because in the future, you'll be able to put on your goggles and be able to communicate with people across the country, across the world. You'll have business sessions inside of the metaverse. You'll have images that'll look like you, that'll be in there inside the metaverse. You'll buy property in the metaverse. You'll be able to own a restaurant in the metaverse. You'll sell paintings and other valuables that you have. Usually it's going to take place in a way where cryptocurrency is the exchange for the purchases. So let's get into what is the metaverse. I want you to work on learning more about it, and then figure out where do you fit and how can you make money. Now, all of these items have to be repaired. Robots have to be repaired. They have to be replaced. There are parts that are necessary in each one of these items. All of that is what an entrepreneur looks for. Those are the types of things we try to establish. Where do I fit in as a capitalist into this world, and how do I make money? And that's what you have to figure out for yourself. I know that what I'm doing is creating more, forcing people to have a broader knowledge of what's traditional. At the HBCUs, it's still very much arts and education, history, sociology, all of that's good. But how do you compete against somebody who's involved with machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics? How do you get into the world and not have the ability to understand the metaverse and how it works? How do you really understand cryptocurrency and that exchange through the blockchain? What is the blockchain? The blockchain is basically a computerized ledger sheet that everything and everyone one day will be inside the blockchain. When people are born, instead of paperwork, the data will go into a blockchain. The blockchain data is viewed by millions of computers around the world, same data. So it becomes immutable. What do I mean? You can't go in and hack it, because if you go in and you hack out a data point, all the other computers will immediately fill it back up to its original capability. So what will happen now in the future is, if you want to buy some property in Singapore and you're in St. Louis, and you evaluate the property as you would have, and you're ready to make the purchase, through the blockchain, you'll be able to go person to person. I'll be able to buy that property using Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of the other coins that may be out there that I'm interested in, that the other person is interested in receiving. We would then be able to take our wallets, which are basically our data, and I can send that person $100,000 in Bitcoin. They can send the documents to me, showing that I am now the owner. And that's going to be the future of transactions all over the world, and within the United States, and within St. Louis in the future. Now, what have we just did? Earlier, I eliminated doctors, pharmacists, taxi drivers. Now I'm eliminating lawyers, brokers, real estate brokers, and the big one, banks, because we don't need banking as we know it today in the future, because it'll instead of it always being B2B, business to business, it'll be P2P, person to person. That's how it's going to be in the future. Are we ready for that? Do we understand it? Have we embraced it properly yet? I think it's definitely a question that should be discussed. Bishop, I hope you'll be able to lead that discussion. I know you've heard me speak in the past, and such a wonderful organization that you are leading along with your associate. I'm just happy to have a chance to speak to you here. Unfortunately, I'm in travel. I think that we need to embrace those of us that are here, that are listening. We all are part of the diaspora. And if you look at Africa, Africa is the wealthiest nation on the planet in terms of natural resources, and yet it's one of the poorest. So more of us need to recognize the value of embracing our African brothers and sisters and reaching across the water and get back involved. I've done it. I am a king installed in Ghana in the Ada section. A king is the same as what you might call a chief, but it's a highly respected post. Now, by the way, let's look at that history. You know, Africans had multi-levels of kings inside of a tribe. And that was the primary term until the Europeans started coming over. And they said, from now on, you cannot call yourself a king. You can only call yourself chiefs because there's only one king, and that's the King of England. They stole that from Africa. So we're taking it back. So if you were to see me, the term that you would use is Nene. That would be how I'm addressed over there. My full name is Nene Akofe Obiokansi. And I took 12 brothers with me. All of us have been renamed. And Pastor Jamal Bryant out of Atlanta, my good friend and Kappa brother, who I helped hire to take over New Birth Missionary Baptist Church when Bishop Long died. I'm on their board of directors, and he also was installed as a king, a spiritual king. So what's over there? I mean, it's bauxite, it's gold, it's cocoa, it's diamonds, it's silver. It's so many natural resources exist. And more, I'm finding that the leadership of many of the African nations, unlike some in the past, have now been westernized and educated over here and in England and Canada. And they see that, you know, they have to be very careful because the Chinese are coming in. They're buying up the countries. They'll lend them money that they can never pay back, and they basically will step in after that and run a country. That's happened in at least one African nation already. So if we decide that we're going to help out, we need to look at first visiting various countries in Africa. I'm also a paramount chief and stood as a paramount chief in Sierra Leone. I did a heritage check, and I am from the Mende tribe. And the Mende tribe was one of the tribes that were taken, of course, from Sierra Leone as slaves. But also, if you remember, there's been several stories about them as being, you know, fighters as well as farmers. So you kind of wonder, well, what's inside of your DNA? And you never know what's in your DNA or who you are because it is buried. But let's face it, we as Africans are the oldest humans recognized on the face of the earth, which means that our DNA has traveled for thousands and thousands of years. And each of you have a rich DNA inside of you. And it's not just your mom and dad and grandparents, but it's thousands of people who copulated to create you. So there's instinct inside of you that you need to reach for. And in business, we have to, yes, learn empirical knowledge, what you study, et cetera. But you also have to be ready to follow your instinct. That little noise, that voice in your ear that on a dark street tells you, hey, you better cross over and get out of here. Instinct. And in business, I found that instinct is extremely important. There are many, many businesses that I've bought when it looked like I shouldn't. For example, when I bought a hotel in Detroit, it was at the time when the mayor was going to jail. The city was facing bankruptcy. The automobile industries were upside down, which is the base, one of the largest primary business in Detroit. But what did I do? My instinct was, hey, this piece of property is great. It may take me a while, but I can bring it back. And I do believe that if we're the only Black-owned hotel in Detroit, that we will get the support of a city that was 90% Black in the first place. It took 12 years, we got it together, and I recently sold it. So instinct can sometimes trump the whole question of logic or an empirical knowledge. In other words, you run the numbers, it doesn't quite work, but you believe in yourself and you believe you can actually get this done. Sometimes that's very important for you to follow your instinct. And that's one of the rules inside of being, a good business person, to actually take your experiences and then grow with them. If you could eliminate the fear of failure, think of all the things that you could do that you perhaps didn't do in the past. But let's break that down. First word, fear. Fear is just a mental construct. It's not of nature. You weren't born with it. You've allowed it to enter your mind to slow you up. But just as it's been inside of you, you can also release it and get rid of it. Second word, failure. I don't believe there's such a thing as failure. You might say, well, Dr. Roberts, exactly what are you referring to? What do you mean? Here's what I mean. There are times when things don't work out as you would like. A business maybe didn't make it. A marriage maybe didn't make it. Other scenarios didn't make it. The question is, did you learn anything from those experiences? And if you learned from those experiences, you actually gained positive reinforcement into who you are. Every day when you wake up, you're given 86,400 seconds. Write that down. That's 24 hours in the day. And the moment you think of the moment, it's already gone. So you have to live every moment to its fullest extent. I coined a word in my book, the actionaire. And the actionaire is one who takes their ideas, their dreams, their vision, their passion, and they pursue them with courage and confidence and bravado. I want you all to become actionaires. I want you to realize that if things don't go a certain way, it only means that you've learned from it. It doesn't mean that you were a failure. You just picked up another form of experience that you didn't expect. Perhaps you didn't care for it, but you learned from it. In fact, I always ask people, well, when people do this, what does that mean? Well, the first thing they'll say, I think when they throw that out, it's loser. No, if I do it, it means lesson. That you learn something from every experience, from every second, and the 86,400 seconds that you exist on a daily basis. Your body is constantly in motion. You are an actionaire when you take your dreams and you pursue them. In fact, in the future, I hope from this day forward, instead of you going around telling people, have a nice day, well, what does that really mean? I don't know. But I'd like for you to use my term, have an achieving day. So say this to the person next to you, have an achieving day. Doesn't that mean more? Doesn't that give you a goal or a concept that says, let me achieve something. Don't let me just wake up and live a blah, blah, blase day. Let's achieve something, whatever it is. Let's try to achieve something. So I want everybody to realize that if I ask you for the moment, raise your hand if you think outside the box. Do you think outside the box? Well, if the answer is yes, or if you raised your hand, I'm going to spank you. If I was there, I would spank you. Why? Because if you are living outside of the box, doesn't that presume that you are in a box? Well, what's the size of your box? Is it the room you're in? For kids, is it a jail cell? Is it a crib? A casket? Look, there's no such thing as a box. Don't let words confuse you. Don't let words misdirect you. There's no such thing as a box. There's only the horizon. And today, Dr. King would say, live an actioneer's life. Eliminate the fear of failure. Dr. King would be the first one to say there's no such thing as a box. And therefore, we need to extend our minds, our lives, our treasure, and go and do more with our community, with our state, and with our native land of Africa. Let's be aggressive. Let's have some fun. Let's learn. But let's also recognize that if we lived in a socialist nation, we'd be called socialist. If we lived in a communist nation, we'd be called communist. We live in a capitalist nation. So call yourself what we are, a capitalist. Now, capitalists, sometimes Black folks will say, oh, that's bad. No, it's not. It's what you are living in. And capitalism is pretty simple. You own a widget company, I own a widget company, and we compete to see who's going to sell their widgets. That's capitalism in its bare sense. But let's call it capitalism with a social mindset, such that when you are profiting, you have ways to give back, to contribute back, to tithe at your church, to do the right things with the resources that you have. And when we as a community follow my directives and my subscription, read my books, learn a little bit more about how to succeed out here, and to remain vigilant, to be futurist, okay? To be compassionate, to be able to recognize the value of who you are, your history, your family DNA, and know that you can achieve anything and everything. And we out here are waiting to applaud you. We're waiting to have you stand up and be the proud Black person that you are, and to be able to make Dr. Martin Luther King so proud, and make me proud, and make the bishop proud, and make your family proud of you. Let's do good things. Let's help people. Let's change the trajectory of Black folks in our city in St. Louis and around the country by allowing ourselves to be free, to be successful, make money, contribute back, and become actioneers. God bless you. Thank you very much for having me. We appreciate you. We love you. And we look forward to one day seeing you in person. Take care.